Today we're sharing an unpleasant story with a tragic history. So why would you want to watch? It's a story of 19 men that lost their lives in the shaping of North Carolina simply by building a tunnel across that trestle you see back behind me over there. It is but one of the many stories that you'll hear when you go roaming the mountains. So come along, let's start our journey. Typically on our channel, we like to take you on the many waterfalls and hiking adventures of Western North Carolina. We try to cover some history, the original Native American names, and the stories behind the people and places in our mountains. This story covers what was known as the worst tragedy in the public works in North Carolina. You'll want to wait until the end of this video where we reveal the names of the 19 men that died in this tragedy. The youngest was just 15 years of age. While traveling through the town of Sylva, North Carolina, I ran across a bronze sculpture called The Journey to Freedom. It was in honor of Harriet Tubman. This sculpture originated in Sylva and is making its way across the United States. You can learn more about this exhibit and when it may be coming to a town near you in the link below or by subscribing to this channel. Inspired by this sculpture, I began looking more deeply into the black history of Western North Carolina, in particular, an area I grew up in and was most familiar with, or so I thought. Some of what I discovered became very disturbing to me. In the late 1800s, Western North Carolina was recognized for its minerals, such as corundum, its timber, and other resources. To profit from these resources and expedite shipment, a railroad was needed. Congress agreed that the road, as this project was called, was necessary and that construction should begin. After all, railroads tied the east to the west and fortunes were to be made. Engineers and surveyors were able to create a path that would allow trains to traverse along the sides of the mountains. Building a railroad in remote mountains and rugged terrain was one challenge. Digging tunnels through some of the mountains was another. Because these areas were so remote, where could they find workers willing to risk their lives for such a project? The 13th Amendment was signed in 1865 and abolished slavery. It stated, "Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction." After the abolishment of slavery, there appeared what was known as the Black Code. This was a harsh list of laws created to imprison blacks. Violators could be duly convicted, but why would there be a need for such laws? On May 9th, 1878, the Asheville Weekly Citizen reported the need for workers on the road, saying, quote, 700 are to be sent immediately. The supply of convicts at the penitentiary is not sufficient, and word will be sent out to the prosecuting officers to bring before the courts a larger number of offenders. End quote. Prisoners could be leased to perform hard labor at a minimal cost to businesses with this never-ending flow of dispensable workers, which were typically black Americans. So these tunnels were dug by hand. Men would hammer steel bits into solid rock. Once several holes were drilled, they would then fill the holes with nitroglycerin and other materials to blast the rock into smaller pieces. They would then go inside the tunnels, hauling out the rock by hand. Cave-ins and falling debris would be the demise for many in the tunnels. In the minds of many men, being sent to work on the railroad was much the same as a death sentence. It's been reported that some men would refuse to continue working only to be executed, counting death to be better than the forced labor and hardships they had to endure. Songs such as John Henry were real songs about real people. One such song for the road was Swannanoa Tunnel. There's a link in the description where you can hear this song and read the lyrics. Now we come to the Cowee Tunnel and its tragedy. On December the 30th, 1882, snow and ice covered the ground. Shackled prisoners and a guard climbed on a type of ferry to get them from one side of the Tuckasegee River to the other, where the tunnel was being constructed. The river was running higher than normal due to recent rains and snowmelt. As the boat was pulled across the river by way of a cable, water started coming across the end of the boat. Thinking the ferry was sinking, the prisoners began to push their way to one end. The boat then capsized, sending these shackled men into the icy waters where 19 lost their lives. It has been noted that one surviving prisoner by the name of Anderson Drake helped the guard to get to the bank of the river. It was not until New Year's Day that the 19 bodies were recovered and buried in mass graves. There are stories that they say the graves are at the mouth of the tunnel and even above the tunnel itself, where the tears of the men continue to drip inside. However, local historians and families with ties to the area from that time period put the location elsewhere. An attempt to find these appear to have proven successful, and efforts are being made to memorialize these men. How can you help? Well, first, some may question, weren't they just convicts? That answer would be yes, but consider. We know the tunnel disaster was in 1882. There were the black codes where a black man could be arrested for something as simple as walking down the wrong side of a street. There was a plea for prosecuting officers to bring more offenders. Now, instead of slaves, these men were worked as convicts. The question now becomes, may these men have been duly convicted under nefarious intent? These are the names and ages of the men that are buried in unmarked mass graves. There is a local group of citizens that would like to have a marker erected in recognition of these men. If you feel like this is something the community should do, please like this channel and tell your friends. These likes will be recognized by these volunteers, which help them to determine public sentiment. It will also promote this story throughout YouTube, so more will see it. You can also subscribe to this channel to promote it further, as well as this story and other similar content. Most importantly, please leave your comments so we can see how you feel about this story and help to evaluate where to go from here. Let me hear your thoughts and what you liked. If you have more information on the tunnel, Black history in Western North Carolina, or information from your research on these men, please share that with the rest of us in your comments. The goal is to erect a memorial for these men if possible. It can't be done without your help. As we have much more content coming up, please be sure to subscribe so you'll be notified. That is all for now. I hope to see you on the next episode of Roaming the Mountains.